The impact that AI is having across software is quite big. I think there will probably, for the next 3 years, there will be a lot of experimentation. It will take that long to actually get to a point where a building designed in AI is actually built in real life.
From Ackroyd Lowry, I'm Oliver Lowry.
And I'm John Ackroyd.
And this is Urban Forecast, the show where we talk to the people defining the future of our cities. We discuss their background, what drives them, and the insights they've learned along the way.
This is a podcast for anyone who's interested in how we live, work or play in the cities of the future and what that means for the built environment today.
Allister, thank you so much for coming on the Urban Forecast podcast. Welcome. I wanted to start with a bit about your background. So obviously you're now developing AI tools, but you originally started as an architect. Tell me about that journey.
Okay, yes, thanks. Great to be here. So my background is as an architect, and I had a very normal, what I call normal approach to architecture. So I started studying in 97 and was doing normal kind of architecture progression through university, working in small, medium and large sizes of practices and developing the skills to be an architect, which I really love doing. And I really enjoyed the whole practice of it. But around 2008, I started to get a specialism using Revit and using building information modeling as well as part of that. And it was also around the same time that the UK government was mandating its building information modeling BIM level 2 for 2016. So I started to get very engaged with that whole process and the kind of the industry around that, not only just around the process of BIM and how you manage information on a project, but also how the construction industry works at a wider scale as well. And the reason that kind of started engaging more with that is because I did a master's in BIM at Middlesex University, and that was a kind of a catalyst for me to understand a lot more about that wider context, but also about seeing where technology is going and where BIM is going as well. And as part of that course, we had to do a thesis, and I did one on data-driven design. And that thesis was the kind of the start of AD, automated data-driven design, and it looked at how software technology is impacting the construction industry and architects in particular. And that's something which has developed over time and has led me to be where I am kind of now, where I work at Cope, where we are developing software for the construction industry. And also the founder of AD, which is an organization which is aiming to help the construction industry to design and build faster with better digital solutions. So that very quickly is my kind of route, yeah, it's quite I think it's quite unusual, or maybe it's quite typical for some people, but it seems to be, my route has been going from, I suppose, what I would call a traditional architect to a more kind of digitally enabled architect. And I'm really engaged with seeing how that can be brought to bear across more of the industry.
Do you think that there's, I suppose, do you think that you made that move in part because you recognized the sort of threat to the architectural industry that was going to be posed by some of this technology? I mean, I read an article even in The Guardian, so it sort of reached the mainstream the other week saying, watch out, architects, AI is coming for you, which, and I don't disagree with that. I think that whilst it's unlikely that in the short term architects are replaced by AI, I think that they're going to start becoming replaced by architects working with AI. And then ultimately they could be replaced by house builders working with AI. Do you recognize that risk, and is that in part why you moved?
That's interesting. I don't think it's necessarily why I moved. I genuinely just found it really interesting. I really enjoyed all the work I did around BIM and really getting engaged with that. And I really enjoy, I think, I suppose, finding the new. So I really enjoyed that, BIM was new, that all the technology around that, the processes, learning all of that. I think that was kind of great. I think we're in a kind of a post-BIM state now where, a lot of that stuff is established in places where they need it. And then where it isn't required, people have kind of said, well, it doesn't affect me, which it is a challenging environment, I suppose, because it means that there's a sort of two-state environment of people who have adopted it and those who haven't. But I think just genuinely, I find it really interesting to engage with new things. And, the last 5 years has been fascinating in terms of technology development. And one of the things I have been doing through automated data-driven design is I've been collecting a database of software. So every time I saw a new piece of software, if someone shared it, particularly on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn just say, oh, we're developing this, or I found this. I've been collecting it into a database, and that database now has 750 different solutions in it. And that's, software focused for architects, engineers, and construction companies across the whole life cycle of a project, across all the different areas that you could cover in terms of, construction management or project management, drone surveys, generative design, AI design. All of that technology is expanding at an enormous rate. And in terms of the construction technology market at the moment, the investment in it, so private equity funds, basically, that's nearly doubled in size in the last 2 years. So there's a lot of solutions being developed because these technology companies see that we are quite unproductive as an industry. I think we all know that, but the construction industry has 1% productivity gains year on year, which is, I think, the lowest of any sector. And these new tools are saying, actually, we can start solving these problems. So that's kind of where we are. And that the article in The Guardian was interesting because I think it was Oliver Wainwright who did it, I think. And, a lot of those solutions in there, they've been all over LinkedIn for the last kind of year or so. And there's a few different people who are starting to lead in terms of the voice for those. But, to answer your other question, I think we are going to, the way that we work will be augmented by these tools. Some of these tools will do certain tasks for us automatically. Some of them will need, what I call the kind of the architect's eye or their intuition to manage, maintain, and filter the outcomes. But they are definitely going to have an impact on the industry and the way that we work. I don't know if you've read, there's a book by Neil Leach, which I'm reminded of, and in it, he's quite provocative. And he says that 50% of all architects should stop being architects and start being software developers. And, I think that all of this new technology is demonstrating that some of those people will be architects who have said, actually, I've had enough of working in a manual, traditional manner, which is slow, laborious, and not particularly rewarding. And I want to automate that process and make things better. So a lot of these solutions, I think, are coming out to do that. And some of them will succeed, and unfortunately some will fail. But that means that over the next few years, there will be some real challenges to practices that or architects that want to work in the same way over and over again, because it adds competition to what's going on out there and how quickly we can work. So, going back to that productivity issue, it should raise our productivity. That's the aim of it.
The issue, from my perspective, is that the architectural industry doesn't have sufficient cash to invest in these tools. Therefore, the investment, the private equity, is going to come from elsewhere. And would they put that money in the hands of architects? Unlikely. So whose hands is it going to end up in? Not architects. Therefore, is that software going to be designed to serve architects? Unlikely, because again, as we've already established, architects don't have that much money. So they're not a fantastic industry to sell software into. Who does have money? Property developers. So what if I was private equity, I'd be going, we need to make these tools so that they're so easy that they can be bought by big house builders, property developers, housing associations, and we just radically transform the industry and we stop needing architects. Do you not think that there's a clear risk of that if you just kind of follow the money?
That's an interesting argument. So I don't know. I think there's a couple of different strategies for these software companies. Some of them will have a strategy where they want to grow and be bought by Autodesk, Trimble, Hexagon, one of these big players. So they're building a piece of software, get bought out by a big player, and then that software is then integrated into their service offering. So a really good example of that is Spacemaker, generative design piece of software based out of Norway, was bought by Autodesk, about 2 years ago for around $250 million, I think. And that's now been integrated into Autodesk's offering as Autodesk Forma. And, you know, that team that built that piece of software still exists. They've just been brought into the Autodesk stable, I suppose. And a lot of that is a strategy for some companies. Another example is Enscape as well. I saw a talk at NextBuild this last July, and they had the same thing. It took them about 10 years from initial startup to acquisition, but they were then acquired. I can't remember. I think it was Chaos who bought them, but I could be wrong. But and then obviously they've sold that up. So it follows a very typical startup plan in terms of how a company builds and gets acquired, and that's how they make money, and that's how the venture capitalists who invest in them make money. In respect to architects being able to use them, so it is a challenge. Now, we know that the market's moved to a software as a service market, and that means that we can pay monthly and we can turn software on and off, basically. Now, that's not the case across all software. So, the larger ones, and again, to use Autodesk, Revit is a yearly subscription, and that is expensive. And there's been lots of comments about that over time, and letters sent to Autodesk last year to actually ask for better performance for that value. But a lot of other smaller or medium sized do offer the monthly software as a service subscription model. And that means in terms of cash flow for architects, it makes it easier, hopefully, because they can say, well, we need one license. We only need it for this month. We turn it on, we can turn it off again quite quickly. And we did that in my last practice, where we did that with Enscape, I think, where we would use it when we needed it and turn it off when we didn't need it. And I think that's probably going to be the way that architects will be able to manage the software costs of it. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge, and you're absolutely right. Cash flow for architects is a thing, and how software companies try and manage that is going to be interesting to see over the next few years, because a lot of them start out with a freemium type model, and then they'll start adding on additional functionality to that, and that's where they make the money. So it may be that there are some software out there which has the freemium model. You're able to do so much, but then when you want to export, print, import into your own environment, then that becomes something you have to pay for.
Where are you seeing the industry being most affected? What are the easy wins for these type of tools? I suppose at the moment, like nothing significant is happening in terms of really like replacing people. There's some sort of mad renders coming out of things like Midjourney. There's a bit of automation in terms of feasibility studies, kind of massing studies, coming from things like SiteSolve and, as you said, Forma and Bluefoam, I think. But they're all still slightly nonsensy, and you wouldn't want to trust them. What are the places that you see this, these types of AI technologies affecting first?
So from my experience, the first one is those generative design tools. There are quite a lot of them coming out, and you've named a few there. There's other ones like Giraffe and some other ones as well. In my database, I've got about 20 different generative design solutions. So it seems that in terms of applying AI to a problem, a lot of software companies have said, yes, we can do this. This is a relatively quick win, and they're thinking they can make money from that quite quickly. And
it's funny because it doesn't take you very long as an architect, once you know what you're doing, to do a capacity study or a site study.
True.
What does take a long time on every single project is detailing. And I don't know why there's not more AI technology that takes your BIM model and goes, okay, you've told me that the outside wall is brick and that there's an insulation thickness cavity here, and then the inside's plasterboard. But where it gets to the roof, it just kind of like plops them together. Like, those details are pretty standard, and I can't see why people aren't developing technology. That's a problem that costs much more money than doing a site, a feasibility study.
Yeah. So to use my role at Cope at the moment as an example, that is what they're trying to approach. They've identified that offsite construction is a really good way to automate the process of constructing a building. And the team there, the team are amazing. So the people who are in that organization, you've got Mark, Radu, and Dave set up the company, and I think they're all ex-Grimshaw employees. And they started out as a consultancy and then have built it into a piece of software as well. And that software is what we're really developing at the moment, which is for offsite construction. And basically, I've been using it the last couple of weeks. We did an event last week at UK Construction Week to show this, where you can take a model, an IFC model, so from any software like ArchiCAD or Revit or Vectorworks, take that IFC model, bring it into their web-based software, and it can apply products to that model. So, for example, if you've got structural insulated panels or precast concrete planks, or maybe you're using plasterboard systems, it will take that IFC model and automatically schedule out and create all of the elements for the external walls, the floors, or the internal walls. And then it can then create all of your fabrication drawings from that as well. So the opportunity there is about saying, take it from design to construction much, much faster, and also using the benefits of offsite construction, increasing quality that you get with that, but also the speed as well. So, they are looking at that challenge, and, they've created a piece of software that does, start to solve that. And that's where you using that example earlier, a lot of the people behind the scenes who are developing the software are architects or computational designers or BIM managers, and they've moved into visual scripting with Dynamo or with Grasshopper, and now they're doing actual scripting in C# and coding to create this piece of software and test it all out. So they've gone on their own journeys as well, where they've gone very deep into becoming scripters and coders, rather than a traditional traditional route through to being an architect or whatever that may be.
So that software that you were mentioning by Cope sounds interesting. You sort of appear to be tackling the same problem that Modulus are tackling with their Tessa software, but the other way around. So I think Modulus started with the offsite construction that they wanted, and then realized they needed a piece of AI to sort of get it from design into their system. Whereas I think what it sounds like is that Cope have gone the other way around. They've sort of built the software and then gone, right, we'll take your model and we'll make it into an offsite fabric. Have they got are there only particular brands that they will be able to work with because there's only certain modules that they'll create, or can they keep that kind of open to be procured to a number of different suppliers?
Yeah, so the aim is to have as many suppliers as possible in there, and then people like us or you could go in there and go, this is what I need. I want to use a gypsum system. This is the type of board thickness, whatever it is, and apply it to that model. Obviously, up front, we've got a few products in there which are, testing out this idea and being able to explain it and show it. And over time, we'll get more. And part of what they've done is they've set up the MMC marketplace. So it's mmc.market, and you can go there and register. And the aim behind that is to get products to be put on there. And then when they're on there, we can then take those products, digitize that information basically, and then use it in the models as well. So we've got, I can't remember how many products from that at the moment. We've got, over 100, I think, already signed up, and we're doing a big push over the next year or so, next few months, to really get as many as possible in there. And then we'll start building that into the software. So in time, it will be able to translate, loads of different systems into that model and get it out for fabrication really quickly.
Amazing. I mean, presumably the next step is just to get rid of the idea that it has to be offsite, because it could just start scheduling out materials and you could give that to a builder and you could build it on site. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And there's lots of different systems, aren't there? You've got the different, the categories of offsite construction. So whether it's volumetric or whether it's, a SIP system or something like that, it's different ways of doing it. It all depends on the site, the client, the requirements, some being offsite, brought to site and craned in place is really important and necessary because of site constraints. But in other examples, you have, CLT type systems where it's panelized and it's obviously then put together on site. So, but by having the ability to create that information from the outset, that's what's going to be, it gives you the ability to make those choices. Whereas at the moment, it's very much sort of, yes, if you choose offsite, then great, but it's quite hard to be able to make that decision up front. Whereas the software will help with that process, and embed that in the industry in a much easier way.
So how if I'm an architect and I've got my IFC model, I want to test out, if there's a modular system that's going to work for me, how do I access that technology?
So at the moment, we are signing people up to use it. And if you go to the website, cope.ai, you can get in touch with us there, and we can then engage with you and run through how that works and what it looks like, and provide access for it. So that's the easiest way at the moment, because, it needs a bit of a process to help people to run through how it works. But we're really keen to engage with as many people as possible, get feedback, so we can build in the features that people need and add them to the roadmap.
What do you think you see happening in the kind of the next 3 years, in terms of how rapidly this software changes the industry?
It is a really good question. I think the impact that AI is having across software is quite big, and there's a load of opportunity there. I think there will probably, for the next 3 years, there will be a lot of experimentation, and it will take that long to actually get to a point where a building designed in AI is actually built in real life, probably, because it usually, you're usually looking at least a year, if not two, to get anything built. So the outcome of that is going to take a bit of time, but I think there will be, in terms of software and embedding AI into software, that will continue. And as I said, within my database, pretty much every piece of software in there is linking to AI and how that can automate a process or a task or a design, process as well. So that's probably where we'll be for the next 3 years, I think, in a lot of sort of testing and experimentation. And I would think that students in particular will take hold of this quite a lot, and really, going to the university shows will be quite interesting to see how they take hold of it, because a lot of it's free, a lot of it is open source, and I think that students will engage with that and find different solutions and uses for it. And then as they then graduate into practices, they will inevitably influence more established architects and colleagues with what can be done. But I think over the next 3 years, I think that's going to be probably what happens more so. I think also that the big software companies, like we talked about, Autodesk, Hexagon, Trimble, Nemetschek, they will probably make some more acquisitions in this area to make sure that they're keeping up and that they can embed them into their warehouse of solutions. So, we've seen it with all of them, that they're buying up all these different things, similar to other tech companies. But I would imagine that's what's going to happen.
And what about within 10 years? What if you look for 10 years, once these things have matured, what does the industry look like?
I think it could be amazing. It could be very different, I think. AI and automation, just automation in itself, automating the repetitive tasks that we as architects do, will have a massive impact on how we design and where we bring value, and therefore how we sell that service. So I think probably it's going to take some reevaluation of the profession, which is probably needed and has been for a really long time. This should accelerate it. There are obviously risks with AI in terms of privacy and IP and protecting, design ideas and how you integrate in there. And if you integrate something from somewhere else into your idea, how does that IP get protected and things? I'm sure that will play out over time in terms of claims and court cases and things like that. But I think, as I say, my database got 750 solutions in 10 years' time, it will be thousands. So there will be thousands of pieces of software that will do different tasks, and some of them will be automated and some of them will be AI based. And I think probably it will be the linking between all of those, which will be the thing which makes them successful. Because at the moment we have this bit of software does this, and then something else, and then something else. But if you can streamline and link them all together, that's where you're going to make some great gains, I think.
And you talk about this database. Is that so? How can people find that? Is that with your work with ADD?
So yeah, AD is it's a tech startup, and I've just finished a boot camp for that this week. And the idea behind that is to develop the company into something which serves the industry in a really effective way. The idea behind it is to create a marketplace for all these different softwares so that people can go in there. And the idea is that they can go in and search. They can also test the software in a virtual environment. They can report on that software and compare, let's say, 3 options together. And then they can go through and purchase and use them as well. And the idea is to do that for all architecture, engineering, and construction software seamlessly through this marketplace. So at the moment, there's a wait list. And if people would like to get involved, the wait list is at addd.io/market. And you can sign up there to be involved. And I'd be really happy to talk to people and run them through the idea. And, the website's ready in beta version now. I just need to populate that with some of these solutions, and then I will be sharing it with that wait list, and it will then go live and move on from there. But it's my way of trying to engage, the construction industry and create a central location for all these software, rather than what you have at the moment is these disparate areas and lists on LinkedIn and stuff like that. It's great that people kind of like a list, great, but it doesn't actually get it used. Whereas this marketplace will be about the searching, testing, reporting, and purchase, and then use of those solutions.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Allister. That's been really, really fascinating. And I have loads more questions that I'm going to ask you after I finish this episode. So thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you.
If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe and give us a review, ideally a 5-star one. And if you want to know more, please go to ackroydlowry.com or follow us on Twitter @ackroydlowry and Instagram with the same. This podcast supports LandAid, the property industry charity that brings together the sector to deliver life-changing projects for young people who really need it. Visit www.landaid.org to find out how you can help end youth homelessness.